Autocross is the safest, most accessible form of grassroots racing. There's a class for your car whether it's bone stock or heavily modified. Basically, if you decide one day that you want to autocross, you can sign up for the next event and compete. But because our cars are anywhere from 15 to 40 years old, there are 6 things you absolutely must check before you start attacking the cones in your 79 to 04 Mustang. Tie rods connect the steering rack to the spindle. Both the inner and outer tie rods can wear out. Checking them is really easy. Put the car on jack stands. Make sure the steering wheel isn't locked. Grab the tire from the sides and rock it back and forth. If there's any noticeable play or a clunking sound before the opposite tire starts to turn, you have a failing tie rod. If you grab the inner tie rod and pull, you'll be able to feel play in the ball and socket joint attached to the steering rack. That means your inner tie rod is bad. Your outer tie rod might look fine, but it could have some play. Use a pry bar between the tie rod end and the spindle to test it. Make sure not to damage the rubber boot. If there's no play, you're good to go. If you have a grease fitting, now is a great time to grease the outer tie rod. You can check your ball joints by pushing hard on the top of the tire. If you hear a clunk or feel any play, you have an issue. You can also use a pry bar between the A-arm and spindle to check for movement. Just be sure not to damage the rubber ball joint boot. If your ball joints have a grease fitting, give them a couple squirts of grease. Tie rods and ball joints are not expensive parts, but they are labor-intensive to replace. And you will need an alignment when you're done. Bad ball joints are easy to detect during a tech inspection at an event, preventing you from competing. When you first start autocrossing, you tend to be really hard on the brakes, so you want to be certain they'll be there for you when you need them. Make sure your brake pedal feels firm and doesn't go all the way to the floor when you press it. Check your rotors for any cracks. Also, feel for a lip around the outer edge that indicates the rotors are worn out. Check your pads to make sure there's enough material on them. If they're worn down close to the backing plates, change the pads. Check your brake hoses and lines for any leaks. Make sure the fluid in the master cylinder is at the correct level and isn't dark or cloudy. If your rotors, pads, hoses, or fluid don't look right, or your brake pedal doesn't feel right, fix any issues before your first event. Hitting cones costs you a couple of seconds. Hitting curbs, buildings, or people will cost you a lot more. Autocrossing is tough on tires, especially if you don't have a lot of camber in the car. You're going to experience greater than average tire wear when you autocross. Make sure you have enough tread to make it through the event. If your tires are bald, dry rotted, or your sidewalls have cords showing, you will not pass tech. Your first autocross is not a good place to use up the last bit of life in a set of tires. When you check your tires, you should also make sure that all of your lug nuts are tight. The battery hold down in our cars is not the greatest design. They work well for Ford batteries, but many popular aftermarket batteries are a little smaller and they tend to wiggle. The plastic battery tray moves slightly when you tug on it, but the battery shouldn't move inside the tray. Even a little movement can break the plastic tray or the plastic hold down, especially when you're attacking a slalom. Wedging some rubber between the battery and the tray is not a good fix. I've seen a lot of people fail tech for a loose battery. You do not want your 30-pound battery becoming a projectile in your engine compartment at 50 miles per hour. You also need to make sure your positive battery terminal is covered. Old cars tend to have leaks. Ideally, you don't want any, but a lot of autocross cars have some form of seepage somewhere. If you've got major leaks, you will not be allowed to run. So check for oil leaks, coolant leaks, tranny fluid leaks, rear end leaks, and most importantly, gas leaks. 79 to 04 Mustangs are notorious for rear main seal leaks, transmission tailshaft leaks, and gas tank filler neck grommet leaks. This is another instance of a cheap part requiring a lot of labor to fix. Small leaks that aren't marking their territory on the ground are okay, but you do not want to be the guy or girl who stops the event by putting a puddle down on the course. If you love your cars like I do, chances are that your tie rods, ball joints, brakes, tires, and battery are in good shape, and you're not leaking any fluids. But autocrossing is going to put higher than normal stress on these parts. Failing to find and fix any issues before an event could lead to a parts failure at the event. Your goal is for your car to leave an autocross in the same exact shape it was in when you showed up, and to have fun and get faster. So take some time to check these 6 things on your Mustang, then get it out to an autocross near you soon.